Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, the Divine Feminine Explained, plus working with your shadow side, with Betty Guadagno. Betty was a self-proclaimed homeless meth head prostitute for years until a life-changing experience awakened her to what life is really about. Learn how A Course in Miracles informs her teaching. She's known as Buddha Betty, and her life experience has led her to uncover layers around the divine feminine that can help anyone now navigate their best life. She guides clients as a transformation coach, and she hosts real conversations on her YouTube channel, as well as leading retreats and workshops under her brand The Wheel, Transformation in Motion. She recently completed her first book, which will be published soon. Come and meet Betty Guadagno, the Divine Feminine Explained, and working with your shadow side. Betty Guadagno, welcome to Carefree and Conscious.
Here.
I am so happy to have you. Authenticity seems to be my word for this year, and I've been attracted to people who are really giving a personal message of their experience and how people can benefit from that. So that made me especially excited to host you today. And I know that there are lots of recordings out there that people can find where you walk people through your complete near-death experience. And I'm sure we're going to get into parts of that here. But I want to start with something else, something really interesting that I heard you say about the divine feminine, about twin souls, and lessons and experiences that people are going through right now. Could you share something about that?
Yes, Suzanne, I swear to God, I think I manifested you asking this question just before I was meditating, before we came into the Zoom. And I was like, I would really like to talk about divine feminine, divine masculine today. And here it is. Okay, this is a synchronistic moment that we cannot pass up. This is incredible. So yeah, a big part of my spiritual experience, and just for a little bit of prefacing, I was an atheist before my spiritual experience. I was a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin, zero spiritual awareness, whole life completely asleep. And in my spiritual experience, I saw this template. That's what it seemed like, the template of the universe. It was the outline of creation. And what I saw was the divine feminine and the divine masculine archetype in every mythological family. So I saw myself as Isis and Osiris, as these Egyptian gods. And then I saw myself as Jesus and Magdalene, or Hera and Zeus, Shiva and Shakti, and Adam and Eve. And I actually thought for months, maybe even years after my experience, that I was Eve from the story of Adam and Eve. And I remember going around and exclaiming, I destroyed creation. I did all of this. I can't believe it. But really what it is, it's these archetypes that we all have, that we all embody. Our souls are incarnate with these two energies. So not that we're not whole, we are. The two energies create wholeness. So you can picture a yin yang symbol. And the one large colored side is the divine masculine light, and then the small dot is the feminine shadow to balance it out. And then on the other side, it's the feminine light, and the small dot is the masculine shadow. And so inside of that, you have this wholeness. So it's all about balance. We're always looking for balance. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to ignore, we're not supposed to have shadow parts of ourselves. We are, but it's supposed to be in balance. And so for a lot of us, when we come on to the spiritual path, or we come into awareness, or even just not in awareness, the shadow is usually taking over a big portion of our lives. And that's what it was like for me. I was living in my shadow. So my experience really exposed the shadow to me in this huge, gigantic way.
Would you call it a feminine shadow, a masculine shadow, the shadow part of you as a whole, or how does that translate looking back on it now when you're addicted, you're a prostitute, you're just getting by however you can? How does your new set of glasses frame that?
So the feminine shadow carries attributes like victim mentality, insecurity, people pleasing, cruelty. And then the masculine shadow carries things like cold detachment, egotistical, ruthless, domineering. So honestly, for a huge portion of my life, I was swimming in my feminine shadow. And then towards the tail end of my active addiction, right before my experience happened, I was living in my masculine shadow. And it was just this kind of battle between them, but I was fully immersed in the shadow. Every quote unquote negative trait that a person can embody, that was my whole personality, was to do that. And my victim mentality was so strong inside of me. I thought that playing the victim got me things. It got me sympathy. Maybe it would get me money. Maybe it would get me drugs if I was talking to the right person. And so I was definitely very, very immersed inside both aspects of the shadow, but definitely for the majority of my life, the feminine shadow was taking over.
How does someone identify that their shadow is speaking through them, trying to see through them, trying to feel through them? What are some signs or things to look for so you can stop and examine it? And then what do you do?
We all have shadow attributes. Every single one of us. We're supposed to. It's what balance is about. But if you feel like most of your day is spent in victim mentality, in a people pleasing way, or even if you're super cold and avoidant, how you show up in relationships is really how you'll tell what part of your shadow is showing up for you. Not just romantic relationships, any relationship. How do you deal with people in general? So, one of the ways to start to dismantle the shadow and have your light become your dominant state of being is to start to develop some of the light attributes. So, if I'm living in my victim mentality, if I'm living in my feminine shadow, then I need to develop my masculine light. Because again, picture that yin yang symbol, and this is how we invert the colors. So, maybe at this point in my life, the feminine shadow is the big colored part, and the masculine light is the small. I need to flip it to balance that side of my yin yang. So, parts of the masculine light are discipline, structure, organization, and yeah, I didn't have any of that in my life because I was totally immersed in addiction. So that was a big part of my process. Another part of how you really integrate the shadow is you have to love it compassionately, unconditionally. Ugh, it's so hard. It's so hard, but you have to look at those parts of yourself that you really don't want to look at and offer them forgiveness. Those shadow aspects are your protectors. They've been protecting you for however many years of your life. Sometimes it's for our whole lives. And they've been working really, really hard. They've been working overtime. They have bad benefits. They're tired of their job. And so for me, I had to take them off payroll and just tell them that they were going to go into retirement but they were going to have fun hobbies to do. And so they were just given kind of these freelance jobs, and they get to come in every so often and work with me in union instead of taking over.
Oh man, I'm real visual and I could see like all these different aspects of you and they're all smiling and laughing and giddy. It's like I can tune in to the joy that you feel through the pain that you experienced. What do you say to someone who is in that dark night of the soul now? What would be their first step towards self-love or a realization that they could just step one toe into right now if they're hearing you?
Love this question. Just one small action step will get you into a new reality. A million baby steps equals a gigantic leap. Another big takeaway from my experience and what I help people by teaching them is that this world is really not real. It doesn't make any logical sense because when you're feeling your emotions, it all seems so real, but you know this from mediums, from near-death experiencers, from people who are highly intuitive. There's something that we cannot see. This world is not what we think it is. So I perceive that we're living inside of a dream, and it's almost like a cosmic play. In Hinduism, they call it Leela, the cosmic play. We're actors and actresses inside of this play, and you don't have to be a method actor. You know how actual method actors take it really super far? Like Shia LaBeouf didn't shower and he like knocked one of his teeth out for a role, and Christian Bale lost like 70 pounds for The Machinist. Just these extreme behaviors. That's what I think of when I'm really attached to my emotions and the character that I'm playing here. I just think I don't have to be a method actor. So even if you are going through the dark night of the soul, not to downplay what you're going through feels very real. I have been through many dark nights of the soul. It's very hard to think of spiritual concepts when you're really in the muck and mire. But if you can just have that little glimmer of realization that this isn't real. My soul is learning something. God, this class sucks and I wish it was over. Can I talk to the professor? Is there some way to get out of it? But really, just taking those little tiny action steps can make such huge quantum leaps in your life.
That's beautifully said. There's something that you mentioned about seeing the matrix I really want to talk about. I think it's fascinating. Let's start at that moment in 2019 and you see the matrix.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is the really cool part of the experience is the visuals that came to me. So, my experience actually started because I had taken an overdose of drugs, but it didn't hit me all at once. It wasn't like I shot up a bunch of drugs in my arm and then all of a sudden it was lights out. I had taken a bunch of drugs and I had this long drug-a-log. I mean, I was the kind of drug addict who was taking drugs all day long. Every kind of substance was going into my body. And this day I decided to just take a little bit more because I had a task I had to do. I had to go do laundry. And so I thought, well, I better get real wavy to go do this laundry. Laundry is boring. Let's make it fun. And I had went to the laundromat and I realized I had taken too much. As soon as I put the clothes in the washing machine, I ran out of the laundromat and started to book it home. And I lived about 6 blocks from the laundromat. And as I started running towards my house to get to safety, all of the buildings around me just crumbled to the ground. And all that was left of them was the green lines of matrix code that make them up. And then all of a sudden, the whole world got washed in the brightest white light you could ever conceptualize. And it just felt like this epic game reset. I was being exposed to the architecture of the game that we live inside of. And so I started to run even faster to get back to my house. And then I would make it to a corner and I'd look at the street signs and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant. And I would run to the next corner and it said Madison and Stuyvesant again. And the next corner again. And it was like I was stuck inside of this loop inside the game. And then finally I made it back to my house. And I just thought to myself, oh man, I died. And this is the movie Beetlejuice, because like they don't remember how long they've been gone or where they were or how they get back to their house inside that movie. And that's really what it felt like. And that's when I collapsed. And that's when my whole experience really started to take place. Because I wasn't an educated person, I wasn't necessarily a smart person, I was a crafty person. I somehow survived 20 years of active addiction and always managed to keep myself on drugs that whole time. So you have to be kind of smart to make that happen. But in this moment, because I had never read a book on philosophy or I didn't know anything about spirituality, I didn't know anything about deities, they downloaded everything inside of me in movies. So they showed me the Matrix. They said, this is the world. And then they kind of had me feel the back of my head and I could feel where my plug was inside of my pineal gland. And then they showed me the movie Inception. And they explained to me that this is layers of the dream. We've gotten so lost inside of deep layers of the dream that time feels very slow here, but everything's actually happening in one instant. They showed me the movie What Dreams May Come, which is this beautiful, dramatic Robin Williams movie, which I'm totally obsessed with. And it's about constructing your own heaven. And they were telling me that right now you're constructing hell, but all you have to do is just change your thoughts and you can start constructing heaven. And all of this is taking place what feels like instantaneously with my life review wrapped into it. So I'm feeling a lot of really dense emotions. I'm going up and down the scale of consciousness, going from unconditional love and light and connection all the way down to grief and loss and apathy and struggle and suffering. And I'm rapid firing up and down the scale of consciousness. So for me, the simulation theory and the idea around the matrix is a huge part of my journey moving forward. I know that I'm inside of a game. I'm inside of a video game. And that's the way that it came through to me. I think because of the generation that I'm born in. I grew up playing video games, and I also think that it's to help people of a younger generation have this analogy. Okay, maybe I can get behind the fact that the world is a game. Maybe I can decode it this way. It makes a little bit more sense to me. But if I'm inside of a video game, then I know that there's a goal. And I don't know if Earth really has some big kind of goal. I was downloaded with this awareness of the Great Awakening, that there was some big shift happening, and that's where we're all at inside of the game right now. But I also know that there's hacks. There's cheat codes, there's level ups, there's power ups, there's all these things inside of the game. I don't have to keep getting hit over and over again by the little bad guys. The little Koopas don't have to keep trampsing over my body. I can, jump up, grab that mushroom, power up, and be invincible. And so that was such a huge part of my experience too.
So often people think, oh, I didn't really have a near-death experience because I wasn't lying on the hospital table and I didn't code and they didn't use a defib on my heart or whatever. And we know now from all of the work that's been done, particularly DOPS, UVA, Virginia, we know that there are many ways that these experiences present. Do you feel like your body was just kept safe for you so that you could have this experience, get put back, and now you have a purpose for it? Or do you feel like you were just put back randomly?
Oh yeah, I think that and I love what you're saying about near-death experiences. You can have a near-death experience and not die. Bruce Grayson, he created this scale about near-death experiences, and so many spiritual experiencers put their experience into this scale and they're skyrocket off the scale. Like, I don't know if I actually died. I call it a near-death experience because it's just language, and that's just the language that fits because people know what that is, right? But I love what you're saying about that. And I do think that I had an option to go back into my body or to be reborn. I didn't have an option not to come back, which is what I really wanted. I really wanted to just stay where I was and not have to come back and do this, because the way that my life was unbearable. Who would want to go back to that? I mean, I was really in a terrible state of mind and just a terrible place. And I felt like my body was a dumpster. And I remember being in spirit, out of my body, feeling so free, feeling so light, feeling so connected, and saying, please don't shove me back into that dumpster. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like my body was so broken, was so unhealed. It felt like I could feel how broken my DNA was. And they were going to put me back in, and it was going to feel like sludge and gross and tight and constricted. And I really didn't want to go back into my body. But when I was given the choice of this body or a small baby to go back into, I had no choice. I was not going to start from zero. There was no way that I was going to start from zero. And so I did go back into this body. And I'm glad that I did, because I know that through healing, coming back into this particular vessel, I was able to heal so much ancestral trauma, collective trauma that lives inside of my epigenetics. And so I'm super grateful to be back inside my form. But I do think that they preserved my body because I was only going to have two options.
We're super grateful that you're here too. I mean, quite frankly, you're reaching a segment of the audience that a lot of people just, they're not relating to them. And so, you do have a mission here, but you seem to not show the pressure. I mean, you're playful, you're joyful, and that's what the connection with our higher self and with all and source is really supposed to be about. And I know you find a lot of joy in A Course in Miracles. Can you talk about what brought you to A Course in Miracles and how you use it when you work with people?
Yeah, I'm like covered in goosebumps right now. I'm loving this because as you were saying that, in A Course in Miracles, it says that the whole reason why we're here and we're so confused is because we forgot to laugh. So, a huge part of my mission is to remember to laugh. Don't take it so seriously. It's really not that serious. Now, if I pay attention to the outer dream, stuff seems real serious. Okay, I work for a day job, I work with the homeless population in New York City. I go out in outreach trying to get people connected to care for substance use disorder. And even just today, I was talking to my boss and I was saying, I think I need a mental health break. Like, I can't keep looking at all of this suffering every day. I need to figure out a new grounding technique. I need to bring my awareness back to what A Course in Miracles says, that nothing is actually happening. There's nothing to truly forgive because this is a dream. But it's really hard when you're looking at stuff that's actually happening. So, A Course in Miracles completely changed my life. If you're listening and you're somebody who's looking for transformation, I highly suggest picking up A Course in Miracles. I read about a dozen books about A Course in Miracles before I got the actual course, because the way that it came to me was, this was during my integration and I was in a long-term rehab. That's where I integrated my spiritual experience. It's where I got clean off of drugs. It's where I learned how to be a human all together. And inside of that rehab, I was there for 17 months. So I had this long, and I didn't have access to a cell phone or the internet that whole time. So it was totally archaic. I had to just start reading books. And Spirit kept sending me all the books that I needed. And they would let us go to the library once a week. And I went to the library and there was the small section on spirituality and religion. And I would run to that shelf every time we went there. And this one particular day, it looked as if a book was coming off of the shelf. And there was sort of glitter around it. It looked like there was sparkles around it. And all I saw on the side was the word miracles. And I thought, oh, I like miracles. I'm a miracle. I could read a book about miracles. And the book was A Course in Miracles Made Easy by Alan Cohen. And he broke it down very simply. He really did. He does such a great job. I've read his book over and over and over again. And he really introduced me to this idea of what the Course is. So the Course is this gigantic, huge metaphysical text. It's like 1,800 pages. It's a channeled message from Jesus, and it's channeled through the mind of a militant atheist psychotherapist from Columbia University in the late 60s, early 70s. And it's a reprogramming. Inside of the course, there's three sections. There's a text, there's a workbook, and there's a manual for teachers. And the workbook is where transformation happens, because it's a complete reprogramming. It totally guts you out and gives you a whole new thought system. There's one lesson for every day of the year. And that's really what changed my life. I was reading A Course in Miracles. It's super dense. It's really hard to understand. Again, the movie Beetlejuice kept coming into my awareness. Oh, this is my handbook for the recently deceased. Very challenging to read. Where's my caseworker, Juno, to help me get through it? And I just kept reading, even though there's chapters of the book that I did not understand one word of what I was reading. I just kept going because I really thought that if I finished this book, they would let me come back to heaven. For a long time after my experience, I thought that it was a punishment to be back here, and I felt like God rejected me, and I just wanted to go back to heaven so badly. And so I thought that this was my mission, that I had to read this book, I had to do the lessons, and in a year I would be able to go back home. And when I got to the end of the text inside this book, I took off my shoes. I laid back in my bunk bed, because I lived in a bunk bed for a year and a half inside this women's rehab. And I just remember saying, beam me up, guys, I'm ready. And I read the last word in the last paragraph and nothing happened. But I had a lot more information. And through integrating the message and the lessons of the course, I realized that it's not about going back to heaven. It's about bringing heaven here. And so every day, by practicing the principles of this book, I have an opportunity to do that. I get to bring heaven to earth. And for me, it really comes through in connection to other people.
Yeah, the self-love first. And when you're loving yourself, then you can connect with those other people. And the route that you took to get through all of this was so hard. What did you do in those moments where, you said you were thinking, beam me up, or if I just, you're bargaining with God. And so what did you learn from that bargaining process? Like, I'll just do this and then you can take me.
Well, I think one thing that I learned is that God's not listening. No, I'm just kidding. One thing that I learned is that by doing righteous things, it made earth totally tolerable. So I wanted to go back because my life and my thought patterns were negative. I didn't like being here. I didn't like me. I didn't know me. I didn't even know who I was. All I knew is that I had this totally blissed out experience in heaven. And now I was back in this third dimensional reality where everything seemed really heavy and really insane. And I did not want to be part of it. But then the more esteemable things that I did, the more it felt so great to be here. I was climbing that scale of consciousness on a daily basis. And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I live all day, every day in unconditional love and bliss. Like, I'm a judgmental, controlling, defensive person, okay? I have character defects that I work on every single day. Some days are better than others. But I just realized that I could live my life however I want here. I could still be a homeless meth head prostitute if I want to. I'm going back to heaven no matter what. There's no such thing as condemnation. If I made it there once, I'm definitely making it there again. But it feels better to live life righteously. It feels better to be of service to myself, to humanity, to other people. And it feels so good to live as the most authentic version of myself. No masks, no lies, no insecurity, warts and all. This is who I am, and this is how I get through my experience.
It's easier to keep track of things when you're honest.
Yes.
You don't have to continue a story. And I think a lot of what we're talking about has to do with disassociating from ourselves. And the addictions can show up in so many ways, shopping, drinking, whatever it is. The addictions show up and they're a form of being out of the body. What do you recommend for people to feel connected in their bodies?
I do think that doing acts of service is a really good way to ground yourself. So I also don't really believe that there's any one size fits all, but I'll share what works for me to feel
Right.
like I'm inside my body. So I'm a gluten-free, sugar-free vegan who only drinks water. I used to eat pills out of other people's puke. Okay, this is a huge transformation. This is wild. But those are things that I do. I eat clean and I haven't had sugar in almost 2 years. I went to a hypnotherapist to stop eating sugar because it was that crazy for me. It was a real addiction. And it was probably my first drug of choice in my whole life. It was sugar. So that makes me feel like it just makes me feel more grounded in my vessel. So I eat super clean. I drink water. I don't watch the news. That's a good way to stay grounded inside your body. And I have people all the time tell me, well, how will I stay informed? Well, you don't need to be informed about what you just don't. You just don't need to be informed. If it's really meant for you, it's going to find its way for you. You'll find out. You don't need to watch the news to find out. Some other things that I do, I don't like zen out on a pillow and meditate all day. That's not one of my things. I live in New York City, very fast paced. I'm a multitasker. I like to do lots of things at once. So I meditate and connect with my inner child while I exercise. We devote 15 minutes of uninterrupted cardio and her favorite songs. And that's how I meditate. And that makes me feel so grounded in my body. So I did a lot of parts work where I worked with all of these shadow aspects of myself. My unhealed, my wounded inner child has now transformed into my healed inner child. And she's a rock star. She is the coolest. She's in a band. She wears a feather boa and sunglasses. She's so fun. And that makes me feel really grounded. I also make it a game of manifesting my reality. The law of attraction is wholly real, 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 real. I live in a beautiful luxury 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in a brand new building in New York City. I have a beautiful, loving partner in my life. I have spiritual community and friends, and all from switching my thoughts around and healing the underlying blocks. I wasn't just about affirming new things. Like, I'm a millionaire. If we could just affirm things like that, we would all be millionaires. but it's about healing what's the wound underneath it, what's blocking that thought from actually manifesting into reality. And I think spiritual community is a great way also to be connected inside your body. And if you can't find a community that fits for you, create your own. Okay, get creative, make your own space if you can't find one that fits.
Yeah, and I love this point. Like, we don't have to live in a van down by the river, bathing in the river and wearing the same t-shirt and jeans every single day to be spiritual. We have to allow ourselves to be ourselves fully and completely self-actualized and part of a community, an active part of the community. That's that's good stuff right
Yeah.
there. And so many folks right now want to just sort of hide out, like stay in their apartment for days on end because, ooh, it's scary out there. Do you find healing in nature?
Yeah, well, like I said, I live in New York City, so we
New
don't
York
have a ton of
City.
nature. But we do have random trees that stick out of the sidewalk. So I will go and hug a tree. And even if and I have to walk about 25 minutes to get to a patch of grass that isn't covered in dog shit. So sometimes it can be challenging to find nature in New York City. Of course, we have Central Park, we have Prospect Park. There are places to go. But sometimes I can just do a visualization and I can just kind of like imagine grass at my feet if I can't actually get to a piece of nature. I shove my hands inside my big house plants. If I need to really ground myself, I need to feel the earth. But I'm not one of those chicks who's like totally obsessed with nature. I'm just not. I think that if we were meant to live in a van down by the river and only wear one thing and live off the land, we would have chose to have been born in a different time. Okay, we live in the time of like heated bidets and cell phones and the internet. Let's take advantage of it. Like take advantage of modern marvels. We're here for it.
Well, I'll tell you something really, really weird, but look who you're talking to and look what we're talking about. I know that I don't drink enough water. I don't hydrate enough, and I get so busy, and I really don't like water. And, before a bunch of people inbox me about, putting different things in your water to make it taste good, I do all of that. So I started getting bladder infections, and I hadn't had one in like 30 years. And I'm like, the body is going to force you to do what you need to do for yourself. But I love my plants. And if I'm not out in nature, I do talk to my plants. I do. It's like a meditation for me. Like you're talking to your child self in your parts work. And I'm talking to my plants and telling them how lovely they are. And this plant says to me, drink, drink. And I'm like, did I not give you enough water? And I'm feeling the soil and everything. And then I heard one of my guides behind me say, you need to drink. And so it's like everything is conspiring around us to take care of us. And when you allow that connection, you get the information you need, you get the impetus to do what you need to do. And I love what you said about community. When you talk about if you don't find a community, whether it's online or in person, go create it. So I have a big question for you too, but can you tell us how people work with you and do you have like a community yourself?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. So, yeah, like I said, I have a day job where I work in a substance use disorder clinic in New York City, and I do a lot of street outreach. And then I have a private coaching business where I work as a transformation coach. So, people come to me with lots of different things. They're at some point in their spiritual journey, they want to heal something, they want to look at their shadow. And I always say that it's really important to do that inner work with another person because you're about to walk into a deep, dark cave. And you wouldn't do that by yourself in actual reality. So why should you do it in the recesses of your mind? You need a flashlight. Your friend that you're with should have a flashlight. You should both have harnesses. And so that's all about connection to spirit. My flashlight is my connection to source. My harness is most certainly my connection to source. And so all of that foundation needs to be laid first. And then, yeah, I host like really affordable workshops so that everybody has access to this because everybody deserves to heal. I offer a sliding scale in my coaching business. Nobody should be denied work with a mentor or a coach. Everybody should have access to this. And then my workshops are all themed. So like I have one about your inner teenager coming up or, overcoming limiting beliefs or inner child or, all these things that we're looking for teachers to guide us through. it's not as complicated as it might seem. But yeah, I did. I created a spiritual community. It really started off of connecting with other women in recovery who had also had spiritually transformative experiences. And I was spending hours every day talking to these individual people. And eventually I just said, I can't manage my time like this, spending 4 hours each day talking to different people. Let me just create a space where we can all talk together, because we all have really valuable things to share with each other. And so that's what I did. And I created this little community. I've had it for about 5 years, and it used to be 4 of us, and now it's upwards of 50 of us. And the group it's a virtual group, and everybody's welcome. It's free. It's all are welcome. We have a different topic every week. And then I have an in-person group too. We meet in the Flatiron district in Manhattan, and we meet once a month, and we have a spiritual experiencer come and share their story. And then we have time to fellowship and just chat and be with each other and learn about each other afterward. And it's really so transformative and beautiful. And I took pieces from all of my other spiritual communities that I've been a part of, or I am a part of, and I molded that into what I created. The things that work, the things that don't work, I don't want them up as part of my community as much as I can help it. And just really structuring it around that. What have I seen? What have I liked? And what have I not liked?
Well, you're writing your first book right now, and I won't jinx it by saying congratulations, knock on wood, because we know it's going to be great. We know a lot of people are going to see it, but I'm going to just say this much. A real good friend of mine who's crossed over used to say, Susanne, writing a book is like birthing an elephant with no anesthesia. But something tells me that yours is going to flow easier, and it's your story. What will you want people to get out of a book that you present to the world?
Yeah, so I have finished the book. It's professionally edited. It's ready to go. I'm manifesting a literary agent to get me published by a big publisher that will have multiple book deal and New York Times bestseller and all that beautiful stuff. And really what I want people to get out of the book is that no one is too lost to change their life. Again, if I came from a gutter, a literal gutter, I did not look the way that I look now when all of these things were happening to me. I was missing most of my teeth. These are paid for. I was super skinny. My skin was gray. My eyes were dead. I had huge holes all over my face and my arms because every time that I got high, I thought that bugs lived inside me. And so I would cut myself open with razor blades and burn myself with torches, trying to get the bugs out of me. I was a disaster, really, truly a disaster. And I felt victimized by the world and victimized by my circumstance and victimized by every person that I encountered. And I was able to transform. And so my book is half a memoir, but really it's a teaching memoir. And so there's spiritual teachings woven into every aspect of it. I grew up with a lot of generational trauma. And so there's ways to undo and unravel that generational trauma. And there's aspects about like how to stop procrastinating, how to dial into your divine feminine, how to let go of toxic, codependent, abusive relationships. These are all parts of my story. And so interwoven inside the storytelling is tools for people to do the same thing.
It sounds wonderful. If your body died tomorrow, how would you most like to be remembered?
Ooh, that's really good. I would like to be remembered as a person who transformed. And I'll tell you, being on my own journey, there's some people who still think of me as the last version of myself. And I don't know if their minds will ever change. And that's okay. I have acceptance around it today. But I would love if my main memory was to be one of a butterfly. I came out of the cocoon. I melted into a pile of goo inside there, and I transformed into a butterfly. And so I would love for my memory to be one of transformation and hope, a person who inspires hope. Again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Literally anybody.
Wow. Betty G, thank you.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media @carefreemedium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.